It's just one of these major events like 9/11 or the assassination of RFK or something like that. It's going to be a game changer. So, of course, I went to social media to see, well, what are the conspiracy theories? Again, within minutes, they were popping up. And to be sure, there's a lot of anomalies. So we call this anomaly hunting. Whenever there's a big event, people go searching for little details that don't seem to fit the narrative. The narrative being that this lone assassin, a nut, a deranged kid, tried to take Trump out. That's, appears to be what happened. But there are a lot of questionable things that the Secret Service director in her interview so far has not been terribly helpful, as you said.
People, it is August 1st, 2024. I am Dave Rubin, but I am officially off the grid for August, as you know, but we did tape a whole bunch of stuff for you this month. That way the algorithm doesn't kick us out and I don't become completely and utterly irrelevant till I come back in September. And I'm very excited to have this chat with my good friend, Michael Shermer, who, of course, is the founding publisher of Skeptic magazine and the executive director of Skeptic Society, and a Californian. I'm not exactly sure why. I'll have to talk to him about that. Michael, it's good to see you.
Elon's on his way out. Maybe I should follow Elon to Texas.
Maybe you should follow Elon to Texas, but you are fighting it out. You were in Los Angeles. You've moved a little bit outside of the city these days, but you're still fighting in California.
Yeah, it's hard to leave Santa Barbara. It's pretty nice here, but we just found out this morning the local public school here had one of their teachers arrested yesterday for having planted a camera in the girls' locker room or bathroom or something. It's like, really? And then actually he was arrested 2 days ago, and then we found out this morning he's out on bail already. Of course.
Right. I would say unbelievable, but of course is actually the thing that we're supposed to say as it pertains to all that. And of course, as you know, also, Gavin Newsom signed SB 1955 into law, and now the state can quite literally hide from the parent. Will quite literally hide from the parent whether that child is being called by another name or another gender or other pronouns at school. I mean, it's really bananas stuff.
Totally. Well, here's an argument for school choice then. Just leave those schools that do that, practice that sort of thing. Public schools, it is. Of course, it's not fair to, parents that can't afford that. And a lot of private schools are expensive. So, ultimately the solution is you just can't have laws like that.
Right. So the reason that I thought it would be good to have you on for sort of our first off the grid thing, and we are taping this about a week in advance. So we're taping this at the end of July. So there's a lot of things moving at the moment as it pertains to, let's say, some skepticism around what happened with Trump a couple of weeks ago and some of the conspiracy theories around Joe Biden and a bunch more. But I thought we could do some of that and then some sort of more evergreen stuff that you're always talking about what's been happening in the scientific community and a whole bunch more. But why don't we start with some of the weirdness around the Trump assassination? And again, there is a little bit of a delay between when we're taping this and posting it, so some of the evidence or theories might change. But one of the first thoughts that I had about an hour after the initial shock of Trump being shot was that we were going to go down some crazy, crazy rabbit holes as to what really happened here. And I have to say, our Secret Service and the people in charge, they don't seem to be doing themselves any favors when it comes to putting these conspiracy theories to bed. So this is your expertise. You've written many books about conspiracy theories and everything else. How do you look at an event like that? Were you immediately, basically, when it was happening, were you immediately like, okay, here we go. This is what I'm an expert in, and I'm going to have to explain a lot of this to people?
Yeah, I just gotten off a plane from Vegas for the Freedom Fest conference, where, in fact, the day before, RFK Jr. Was speaking, and all the other presidential candidates were there, the Libertarian Party and the Green Party, Jill Stein, and the Constitution Party, and Cornel West, brother Cornel West, he was there. None of them had any security. They were just walking around. People didn't even know who they were, really. But when RFK, like 3 hours before he was supposed to arrive, there were armed guards. There were guards with dogs, German shepherds running around. I thought, oh, this is going to be different. I had a signed copy of my book for him, Conspiracy, because I thought this guy needs to read my book.
Yeah.
And I'll just wait in the green room for him. But he wasn't coming in the green room. I found out he's going through a secret entrance and exit that nobody was to know about. And I'm like, wow, okay. And then the next day, this happens. Like, okay, this is getting serious. And now I see that the White House has ordered the Secret Service to provide protection for RFK Jr., which is good. It's only fair. So when I got off the plane, I'm in the Uber and I'm reading the scrolls through my phone, and the Uber driver is a big Trump fan. So he's like, oh my God. Then he calls his dad on the spot, who's also a big Trump fan. Dad, turn on the news. I mean, it's just one of these major events like 9/11 or the assassination of RFK. Or something like that. It's going to be a game changer. So, of course, I went to social media to see, well, what are the conspiracy theories? Again, within minutes, they were popping up. And to be sure, there's a lot of anomalies. So we call this anomaly hunting. Whenever there's a big event, people go searching for little details that don't seem to fit the narrative. The narrative being that this lone assassin, a nut, a deranged kid, tried to take Trump out. That's, appears to be what happened. But there are a lot of questionable things that the Secret Service director in her interview so far has not been terribly helpful, as you said. So for example, why, if they're securing the area, it's not that big of an area, how come they left that particular building alone? That building was a staging area for the local police. How come they didn't hear this guy climbing up on the roof?
Right. They were quite literally in the building.
Underneath him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a ladder. You can see, I just posted an article this morning titled Conspiracy or Incompetence. I'm leaning toward the incompetence because in general, most government agencies and people in power are relatively incompetent when they try to pull off something like this. But how did that ladder get there? I mean, it's a pretty tall ladder. It must be 15, 20-foot ladder. Was that just by chance? And then there's the videos. You've seen these, I'm sure, of the people pointing out to the local police. Look at there. There's a guy right there on the roof. And so somebody put a clock on that one video that was 2 minutes and 2 seconds before the shots rang out. And so, the police said, whoa, okay. And then there was the cop that climbed up the ladder and then ducked back down or fell back down. We're not sure when the guy whirled and pointed the gun at him. How come he didn't have his gun out, like ready to go? And then another curious one is the sharpshooters on the roof, the Secret Service sharpshooters, and they're aiming at that guy. Now, I thought, well, maybe they have a, no shooting on warning. You have to wait to the person shoots first. But no, according to a lot of retired Secret Service agents have been giving interviews, no, you shoot if there's a warning or a threat. But they didn't. And so you hear in the video, bam, 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 and then bam, 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 they shoot him right within seconds. So they must have, and it looks like they had him in the scope.
Right. The sniper's looking directly at him and shot him dead within the second that he shot, basically within a second or two. So that seems a little bit odd in and of itself.
Right. Right.
So,
and then,
go ahead.
Then Trump goes down and then he pops back up. Now, according to some of these retired Secret Service agents giving interviews, they would have never let that happen. Remember when Reagan got shot, they threw him in the car like a rag doll. He's not getting back up. Trump's a big guy. Maybe it's just, he's a big guy. He's, 6'4" and weighs 250 or whatever he is. Maybe and also that 5'4" woman, what is she going to do? He's, basically you hope that they shoot at his waist because the head is totally exposed when he pops back up.
Right.
That seems kind of weird. I don't think all of this adds up to a conspiracy other than a conspiracy of dunces that just screwed up.
So, right. So that's exactly where I wanted to go with this. Look, I do think it's possible there was some nefarious activity, and I would be willing to entertain those conversations. But my gut feeling is that with everything that you just described there, it's just incompetence across the board. People not knowing what their job is. A lot of DEI hiring. You mentioned that, basically a 5'4" woman trying to guard a 6'4" former president. People that maybe didn't know what the standard operating procedures were. I'd love to find out some more information about that sniper specifically. Or I'm sure you heard the head of the Secret Service who said that they didn't have someone on the roof because it was sloped. Which to me isn't that an invite to every assassin everywhere? Let's just find the sloped roof.
Yes, I know. And it's really barely sloped at all. I mean, come on. Really.
Right. It was
no trouble walking around on it. Yeah. But
how do you, as someone that debunks this stuff, how do you balance like that, what seemingly is a catastrophic level of incompetence, that lends itself to all the conspiracy theories.
Yes, it does. Well, that's just the way it goes. How do you counter it? Well, you look for there'd have to be some kind of extra evidence, like a whistleblower on the inside that said, I was in the building and people heard him and they said, quiet, let him go, or something a little more direct other than just, again, a conspiracy of dunces, operating like that. I've heard people say, well, how do you know how you would respond in a crisis like that? I don't. I probably would screw up, but I'm not trained to do this. I don't know what it's like to be a Secret Service agent. I just presume they go through these drills periodically. Like, let's pretend the president just got shot. What do you do?
Of course.
And let's just run through it. I assume that. When I was an undergraduate at Pepperdine, Gerald Ford came to speak, 1975, September 75. And it was quite something. Days ahead of time, they were scouting the campus and going around. And then that morning that Ford was supposed to come, there were snipers on the roofs. It's kind of on side of a hill, Pepperdine. So the buildings are just kind of sloped down. And they had sharpshooters on each rooftop. It's like, wow. It was impressive. So again, how come Trump didn't get that? I mean, then there was some stories about that the Secret Service was thinned out a little bit that day because of Dr. Jill had some public event and they had to protect her. Something I'm not sure if that one's true, and again, there's so much swirling around and the fact checking comes slower, so we'll have to wait and see on that.
What's with all the bird flu chatter over the last couple of weeks? First off, do birds actually get the flu? Seems like people playing Scrabble just combined two words and said, let's use this. But real talk, something is unfolding. I've seen about 15 different headlines recently. Luckily, the wellness company has your back. Their contagion emergency kit has a variety of medicines to treat respiratory illnesses, all of which you would need to be in a hospital to get. But the wellness company removes all the red tape. It's election year and we know who the desperate party is, so being prepared with the Contagion Kit is probably a good idea. Get the Contagion Kit and save about $45 with code Rubin. Go to twc.health/Rubin and use my code. Take a quick intake form after checkout and the kit arrives in about 2 weeks. Medical board approved, red tape removed, kits available in the US of A. What do you make of the strange situation where if you were to go back to, say, JFK's assassination in 63, there's the Zapruder film, there's limited video of it, right? Because not everybody was walking around with a camera. Now, not only do we have way more media, but literally every single person there likely had a camera and there's all sorts of video breaking. And I was thinking there's a strange moment here because on one hand, if you have more video, you would think you would have more clarity about the situation. And yet it sort of seems that we have less clarity about the situation because we have so much video.
Yeah. It increases the anomaly hunting and just offers more quirky things that happen. I mean, there was one of a woman behind Trump who, the shots are fired. He falls down, she ducks down, and then she pops back up with her phone and you see her starting to shoot. They go, how did she know she was supposed to film? What are you talking about? I mean, everybody there has got whipping their phones out, right? That's not unusual. And so again, you're just going to have hundreds of those kinds of things. Alex Jones has been on a rampage for the last 3 days. It's the globalists that are taking Trump out. Okay, who's they, the globalists, again.
So you're basically always looking, so for people watching this that think that there is some level of globalism and people that are anti-Trump and all of these things, which I think that conceptually is largely true. What you're always trying to do is basically say, okay, if that piece of it's true, if you've got sort of your red meat right there, how do we thread all of that to something that actually happened? And that's where many people, I think, online seem to get crossed up.
Yeah, I think the real conspiracy or the problem, I guess, would be the polarization, the equating of Trump with Hitler, which was always a bad idea because he's not. But, again, we know from surveys and just the response to von Stauffenberg and the other assassins that tried to take Hitler out in the 30s, they're heroes in Germany. They have statues and plaques and they honor them, and so, and almost everybody agrees in surveys, would it be moral to have killed Hitler? Yeah, absolutely. So if, then Trump equals Hitler, so therefore, ergo. So we shouldn't be surprised. Now, of course, most people that might make that argument would not turn to murder, but somebody will. Law of large numbers, you have 340 million people. If just 0.001% are mentally ill, that's all you need. Now, again, we don't know that much about this kid yet, Crooks, but a loner, didn't have any friends, got bullied, got kicked out of the gun club, which is really weird. And so, and maybe he was a bad shot. Maybe that's why Trump survived. Who knows? But it was pretty close. And, it's just hard to say what the ultimate motive is. We don't know yet. His father wisely has been quiet, waiting, for more information. But, it's just a stunning turn of events here.
What do you find the tricks are? We've discussed this a little bit before, and many people who've been watching you and I do talks for years now will remember that we did an event at Arizona State University where I jokingly said to the crowd, "Are there any Nazis here?" Someone actually raised their hand. I said, "Okay, you'll get the question, the first question in the Q&A." It turned out to be a trans Nazi. Yes, really. Maybe we can find some B-roll video of that if it still exists anywhere. But basically then this trans Nazi went on to this long tirade about how the gas chambers never exist. And you calmly just debunked all of the nonsense or confusions right there. But I would relate that to sort of what's happening to a lot of people right now as they're waking up to some of the confusions around mainstream media. Say very fine people on both sides, which turned out to be a hoax, or a lot of the COVID stuff that turned out to be really dishonest from the mainstream media, or my audience knows the long list of things. What do you think the techniques are to get people to fully let go of bad ideas or wrong ideas that they have just held on to for so long? Because I think a huge amount of people are doing that right now to some extent as it pertains to mainstream media.
Yeah. Well, in my book, I go through a number of factors that are at work that lead to conspiracism. One, the larger the event, the more likely there's going to be some conspiracy theories surrounding it. The death of Princess Diana, assassination of JFK, 9/11. These are world-changing events, and so people again then go searching for anomalies, anomaly hunting in those big events. And any event has weird things that happen to it, like 9/11. How did that passport get over there? How did this piece of the engine end up over there? What was that weird thing they found at the bottom of the rubble? There's hundreds like that. And then we have a kind of proportionality bias. The larger the event, the larger the cause should be to match it. Since you mentioned the Nazis, the Holocaust, one of the worst genocides in human history. Cause of that was the Nazis, one of the worst political regimes in human history. There's kind of a balance there. But, JFK assassinated by some lone nut. Princess Diana died of what? Drunk driving, speeding, and no seatbelt? That just seems too mundane. Or, 9/11, you're telling me 19 guys with box cutters pulled this off? Come on. It doesn't feel like there's a balance there. And, the Trump assassination attempt, that was a big event. This guy, Crooks, he's 20. He's just some dweeby looking kid. I mean, come on. It seems like there should be something larger there. So people lead to that. And then, could it be? Yeah, it could be. But, the more elements you have to have, if you were to plan that ahead of time and say, okay, now we know the Secret Service is probably going to be cordoning off that building. So how are we going to get around it? Oh, well, we'll just hope the local police fumble around and make mistakes, and then we'll get our shooter up there. And if you were the Secret Service or the CIA or whoever would be behind it, the never Trumper Republicans or whoever it is supposedly in on the conspiracy, would you pick this guy as your assassin? I mean, this isn't exactly Luca Brasi here, right? I mean, he doesn't look like a professional hitman.
Right.
And, same thing with Oswald. Would the CIA really pick this guy? I mean, he's like a major loser.
But would the counter argument be to that? Well, yeah, that's why you pick them, because they don't look like Luca Brasi?
So they look like a lone nut. That is the counter argument. Yes. Right. But at some point you actually want the person to be competent at what they're doing. And these people are usually just lucky. I mean, this kid just got lucky. He even got that close. I mean, it could have gone the other way if Trump had turned. But again, these things turn on chance events. Incompetence and randomness or chance are at play more than conspiracy. And I also wrote about other attempts in U.S. history. I mean, 4 presidents have been assassinated in U.S. history. Lincoln was definitely a conspiracy, but we knew within hours. They had captured several of them, and one of them chickened out and got drunk and failed to show up. Excuse me. Another guy was supposed to kill Secretary of State Seward. Seward had been in a carriage accident the day before. He's in bed with a brace around his neck and then his collared shirt up over it. The assassin gets in there and stabs him with a knife in his neck to try to cut his jugular, but it hits the brace and he fails. I mean, this is completely random, and even getting Lincoln Just the bodyguard was down at the bar. I mean, come on. And, had they not pulled the bullet out, he probably would have survived. There's all these just kind of random chance events. Same thing with JFK. Most people think it was a conspiracy. I don't. I think it was just Oswald acting alone. But just the quirkiness of it. He happened to get a job at the book depository building, the month before Kennedy was to come there. That looks suspicious, but in fact, they tracked down when the motorcade was planned, the route for the motorcade was planned, and it was weeks after Oswald got the job there. In hindsight, the hindsight bias, you look back and start connecting the dots. It looks very suspicious, but you have to look at them carefully.
Right. So what do you make at a sort of societal level for where we're at, even putting aside the situation with Trump right now, but that so few of us seem to believe the same things, or that we watch the same exact videos and come to very different conclusions? I mean, at a societal level, it seems like that can't hold for very long.
No, I'm really worried about the Republic. I was worried before the Trump assassination attempt with the Biden meltdown, cognitive meltdown. And even before that, it was pretty polarized. If we make it to November, I'm going to be pretty happy. And if we get through the other end, I'm actually now hoping for, I've never been a Trump supporter, but I'm actually hoping for a massive landslide by Trump. So everybody just calms down and the country gets back to business as usual in 2025. The stock market's nice and stable. The economy does not like uncertainty. Let's just all go back to work. That's what I'm hoping for.
That's quite an admission by you, my friend. I was not going to ask you who you were voting for. And we had a dinner a couple weeks ago in LA where I had a lot of my more conservative leaning friends. And you sort of said, well, I'm still the liberal here. So I didn't know which way you were going to go. But you think that basically, and that's been my argument on this show, is that if Trump wins by a true landslide, like a Reagan re-election 84 landslide, that I think it will give enough oomph for us to push away the really radical elements of the left that have caused so many of the problems here. I don't think they'll actually go away. And I still think that, they can still cause chaos on the streets and all of that sort of stuff. But I think there'll be enough of a cultural shift that we actually might be able to get to the other side of this thing.
Yeah, and I'm hoping the Democrats realize what a huge, colossal mistake this was, just strategically, whether they believe it or not, to go so far left with the woke progressive stuff. That I think most of them don't go on along with it ideologically or internally, what they really believe. They don't really think men can become women and get pregnant and so on. But that they either censor themselves or they go along with it to virtue signal. I think that'll all just disappear if they get wiped out if they lose the House and Senate and the presidency. Wow. They may have to recalibrate for 2028 election and just kind of reset their goals. That may be good. These things do happen. They swing back and forth. It's just the way it goes in American politics.
Well, it's either that or we follow them into the abyss, and I would prefer not to do that.
Well, we don't want to do that.
We don't want to do that. Let me ask you about a couple other things that sort of more broadly have affected the science community over the last couple of years, because you've written a lot about this as well. People sort of thought originally when the woke thing appeared that, it would affect the humanities, and okay, fine. They've got the acting department at Columbia or something like that, or they've got the, social sciences, but that the STEM departments wouldn't be affected and that the labs would still operate just fine and true research wouldn't be touched. But that really has not held up in any way whatsoever.
No, the sciences, even the physical sciences, the STEM fields have been deeply affected by this. They've all bought onto the DEI woke programs and, kind of self-flagellate their own supposed guilt for the past, even though they didn't do anything. You'll often hear these people say, that we have to, purge the university of all these, racists and bigots. And it's like who? Name names. Like who in your department? Well, I just kind of mean generically. Remember, I think
which also means everybody.
Yeah. That Princeton issued that statement, like we've been guilty of, violating people's civil rights in the Trump administration. Oh yeah, okay. tell us exactly what you did because you probably broke the law. And they're like, well, we don't mean, exactly that we did this. We just mean kind of generically over the centuries we've been bad, right? There's enough of that. The journals have all turned to this, looking for statements to go along with submitted papers, scientific papers that have nothing to do with social science and humanities, just say a physics journal article or something on black holes or something like that. They're still looking for, some kind of statement in there for, how is this going to help the community of minorities or oppressed peoples or people of color and so on, even though the research has nothing to do with the subject. So there's that. And that's in the major journals, Science, Nature, even in Scientific American, whereas, I was a columnist for 18 years, that kind of wound down when, I was not going woke as they were. And there was no big incident. It was just, I could tell the way they were editing my pieces that they were unhappy with the way I was kind of presenting things. And then they went even worse after I got cut. Just that mathematics, like one of them was mathematics is, still racist and bigoted, and there's still these bad people in math. Yeah, again, who? Name names. Which professors are you saying are misogynist? The problem to solve is how come there aren't more women in STEM fields, specifically mathematics, engineering, and physics. And I could tell you, like the places like Caltech, they're falling over themselves to get more people of color and women. And the people
doesn't prove the numbers of how many mathematicians you have in a department doesn't prove that they're anti-woman or anti-black or anything else. It might be a certain set of people are self-selecting in or happen to be better for a various set of reasons.
Yes, mainly probably vocational interest. What are people interested in going in? Because there's lots of asymmetries in the other direction. Steve Pinker points out, for example, that in his field, linguistics, it's like 80-20 women. And he doesn't feel like, well, they must really hate us men. No, it's just people go into different fields out of different interests, not skills. And that's almost surely the case here. Because again, if you ask the people that are saying this is a problem in STEM, are you one of the people that are keeping women out of your department? Right. Oh, no, not me. Well, who? Is it the department chair? Is it your colleague over there? No, I'm not saying this specific. Okay, come on. So there's a big problem there.
Guys, G-Defy shoes are the absolute best choice for walking, running, and standing. If you're someone who loves being active or you simply spend a lot of time on your feet, these are the shoes for you, and they're the shoes for me too, given how often I'm playing ball every week these days. Every shoe contains G-Defy patented Verso Shock technology, which aligns your body, absorbs harmful shock from the ground up, provides energy return, giving you the boost you deserve to walk like a champion. Plus, all G-Defy shoes come with 2 free orthotics. The shoes will support your active lifestyle, keeping you comfortable and free from discomfort. Just go to gdefy.com, use code Rubin30 for an exclusive $30 off 130 or more. That's gdefy.com. Use code Rubin30 for $30 off 130 or more. Do you connect that why DEI has so destroyed so many of these institutions and departments? In a weird way, I think we could connect that back to where we started with the assassination attempt, because it might just be incompetence based on that. So we talked about it might be a confederacy of dunces, but over time, if you just keep hiring people for the wrong reasons, a lot of people will become conspiracy theorists because nothing will work properly.
Yes, that's right. That's actually a great connection. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, our latest issue of Skeptic is on culture wars. I have an article in here by an archaeologist named Elizabeth Wise at San Jose State University. You should have her on the show. She ended up in a lawsuit with them and finally settled and is now doing something different. Had to leave her profession of archaeology, studying bones of Native Americans in California, primarily, of a huge collection, after 20 years, because she refused to go along with the idea that you can't say what sex a skeleton is because we don't know how those people 5,000 years ago would have identified. And she's like, what? I mean, look at the pelvis. Yeah. This is a male pelvis. This is a female pelvis. We know this from, centuries of science. And right. Oh no, you can't say that.
At best, you could argue maybe they dressed in a different way than their pelvis would have implied, but that's different.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, she's not even talking about gender and culture. She's just talking about bones, just basic biology. And there's just differences between men and women. Biologically, it's binary. Everybody knows this, despite what the activists say or the virtue signalers say. Everybody knows this. So, but she had to fight for this. She ended up at the Heterodox Academy in New York, Jonathan Haidt's group, for a year, just to kind of make that transition. Now she's going to have to be an independent scholar. And they also had some weird stuff about at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, Teddy Roosevelt's old place.
Yeah.
And of course, they had to take down his statues.
That was my favorite museum growing up. We used to be going there a couple of times a year from school and my folks, and
Yeah. Well, they have some Native American artifacts there, totem poles. Oh, sorry, you can't call them that anymore. I forget what the politically correct term is, but but they had them in these cases.
Yeah.
And they're kind of acknowledging that, the people that made these believe they are infused with spirit power. But then then the placard says something like, they actually could exude spirit power. So this is the worst one. If you're menstruating or pregnant, you should be careful getting near this artifact. And she just could not believe it. And then she actually got asked at she goes to some collection to do some research there, if you're menstruating or pregnant, you can't come in. It's like, what? She's a feminist. She's like an old school feminist, right down the, she's like, this is anti-feminism. This is something some guys in the 1940s would have said. And now the liberals are saying this.
Right.
I mean, this is completely backwards. This is upside down. This is crazy. This is anti-liberalism.
What is old is new again.
Yeah.
It's funny. I had a friend of mine about 8 or 9 years ago when the woke thing was sort of just bubbling up, who we got into a debate at dinner over trans issues. And basically I just said, hey, I don't mind how someone lives as an adult, how they identify, et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't change my view on biological reality. And after about a 3-hour conversation, he said to me, you don't understand quantum physics. And I said, you're right, but either do you. But that's the level of thinking that I think we're dealing with a lot of this.
Yes. So, right. It's an abandonment of objective reality. Everybody's truths are equal. Yeah. If you want to go for a deep root cause, well, it's, postmodernism, the challenges to objective reality. Science is just another narrative. The old version was science is just another story. Now the new version is it's not just a story. It's a story created by colonialists, power hungry, hegemonic, Western ideologues who are racist and so on and so on. And then, of course, if you believe that, then why would you respect science as a tool for understanding reality? You wouldn't. And that's the problem with going down that road. And again, most liberals, so here I kind of break from liberals, is, they don't believe that there's objective moral truths. They think it is really culturally bound. Of course, you can always push them and say, so you think it's okay for female genital mutilation of women? Well, I don't personally think so. Yeah, I know you don't personally think so, but you think it's okay for somebody else to? Well, I don't want to judge, come on.
Right.
And do you think there's some culture somewhere where it's going to be okay to enslave people in the future, or to, gas Jews? Is that morally acceptable? And it just happens to be in Western culture that we don't think it's a good idea, but somebody else will think it's a good idea, and we should respect their rights to gas Jews? No, right? So that's the problem with going too far down that road.
Has that been a challenge for you over the last couple of years? We've done many, many shows together, often talking about atheism versus belief and religion and all that. We had a great debate probably about 8 years ago already with you and Dennis Prager talking about belief and all of that and versus skepticism. But has that been a bit of a challenge for you in the skeptic community and a well-known atheist, watching largely that side of the aisle collapse into a lot of the ideas that you were fighting against, while it was the belief side of the aisle that didn't? If you feel that's a fair way of framing
it is, yes. And someone like Prager and I would, disagree about the ultimate source of objective moral values. His comes from God, mine comes from secular sources of reason and rationality and so on. But that's no longer where the debate is. Now the debate is people like Steven Pinker and I are considered to be, gateways to the far right by liberals. It's like, what? Or right. Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins. I mean, Richard Dawkins is, so old school liberal. 20 years ago, you would have said, this guy is so liberal. Now he's like centrist or to the right. And,
right. You saw probably a few months ago where he had a very interesting statement basically saying that he's very happy to live in a Christian society that respects his right to be an atheist, which was quite an admission by him.
Yes. That was in response to Ayaan Hirsi Ali's coming out as a Christian.
Right.
So Richard called it a cultural Christian. Yes, of course, that Western, Judeo-Christian Western values, equal rights and treatment under the law and respect and dignity and so on. Yes. I'm on board with that. And, but 20 years ago, Richard and I would have been on one side and the Christians on the other side. Now we're all kind of like, hey, we're all in the same camp together of embracing these values against these other people. So that's an interesting divide. It may just be age. A lot of the younger, maybe say millennials or Gen Z, don't see people like myself as part of their team or their tribe. And now, and because it's so tribal, now we're the enemy. Rather than that. So now, I find myself gravitating toward conservatives because at least they know what a woman is.
The bar has been set pretty low.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something that the skeptic community could have done differently? I mean, I remember years ago going to the Reason rally and I spoke at the mall in DC, kind of like the Forrest Gump scene. And I remember saying, hey, because I was more on that side of things and saying, hey, we have to watch out for this encroachment of these bad ideas that are coming from the left. We didn't really call it woke at that time. That's how long ago it was. But was there anything maybe that could have been done that wouldn't have left us, you think, in this situation?
I don't know. I didn't predict that this would happen. The initial split came, in the early 90s when I got into this and started Skeptic Magazine and then kind of visited the humanist groups. They were kind of in this category of like, here's the 12 things that if you're a secular humanist, you believe. Well, I ticked the box for like 8 of the 12. And, I remember talking to the director, am I in the club or not? I mean, how many do I have to tick?
Right. What would have been something that you didn't tick, for example?
More of economic, lower taxes and, less government, things like that.
So it was like policy based also. All right.
Yeah. So I'm kind of libertarian in that sense, fiscally conservative, socially liberal. But to the old humanists, we're just old school liberals, like from the 30s. And I thought, that's not a very big tent approach. I have the same problem with libertarians. You guys need a bigger tent. We get small in number, right? So that's always a problem there. And then after Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, became a bestseller in 2006, then there was kind of a split in the atheist and humanist skeptics movement about how militant you are in your atheism. You got to be really militant. It's like, no, you don't. So that alienated a lot of people. Then there was an atheist plus movement, the plus being social justice. Mm-hmm. So that was around 2008, 2009 when the social justice thing became a thing. I mean, social justice is old. I believed in social justice, but not the new version.
Right.
Which is, as it has to do with not equality under the law and equal opportunity, but equal outcomes. And that's very different. And once you go down that road, this is not healthy.
So you think there's nothing that could have been done? It was just inevitable in a weird way, that there was no guardrail that the more secular or atheist people could have put up to stop this?
I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. I can't do anything about it now, but, can we, moving forward, let's drop if our mission, what is your mission statement? If it's, to understand reality, understand nature, understand what truth is, you have to drop the ideology, because if that's your North Star is, the world has to turn out a certain way because this is the way I want it to be, you're going to distort reality. It has to be the opposite. The North Star is just what is true. And then from there, and even there, you could say, well, we can separate values from facts. So I don't think people should ever be enslaved, regardless if you could make a case that from utilitarian case that slavery is good for society, not good for the slaves, but good for the whole. This is the problem with utilitarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number. Yeah, but what if the greatest good comes at the expense of the minority of people that don't want to be slaves, right? This is why we have a Bill of Rights. And this is why deontological ethics sometimes trumps utilitarian ethics. There's some things it doesn't matter. The tyranny of the majority is a problem in a democracy, which is why we don't have a democracy. We have a republic.
If you can keep it.
if you can keep it.
Michael, I have one more question for you because, as I mentioned, we're taping this end of July. It's airing on August 1st. I am off the grid with no phone, no news, no newspaper, no outside information for a month. I suspect this is going to be the craziest August I've ever done this. Do you think the world will be wildly different when I come back, or kind of just we're going to be in the same old roughly crazy place? You want to make a prediction for me?
I don't think it can change. I think the big change will come in November. I think the build up, the weeks before November, things could get crazy. I hope you're safe and quiet in November for the vacation. I might do the same, but you never know, because look what just happened. I mean, I thought things were going to settle out 2 months ago, and then all of a sudden the Biden meltdown after the debate and all his interviews, it's just painful to watch him. I'm just holding my breath, hoping he can get to the end of the sentence. Like, oh, and then the Trump thing happens. Like, oh my God. And then the RNC, the other night where they have the Teamsters, the head of the Teamsters, like, what?
There's a massive,
what has happened here?
Look, that's the realignment, and that's the wide tent thing that you called for earlier. So I think in that sense, there's a lot of hope. Well, I suspect that we'll see what happens in August, but I suspect that whatever happens in November, there will be many conspiracy theories related to it. So we will probably do this again sometime in the second week of November.
All right, Dave.
Good to see you, my friend.
Nice to see you too.
If you're looking for smarter conversations about academia, check out our academia playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.